Welcome back to another episode of Way Too Wifey. I'm your host, Respectfully Gabby, and in this podcast, we talk all things dating and relationships in this modern day. And if you are new here, hi, I'm Gabby. I'm an online dating coach where I help you transform your confidence to live your best lives inside and outside of relationships. Today we are talking, I'm so excited to get into this episode actually because we are talking about things that I talk about with a lot of my clients. So we're going to give you the inside scoop, what your type is, how to overcome your type, because realistically, your type is probably what's keeping you single. You're letting your ego get in the way. And if you really are looking for love, we have to think outside the box here. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, please hit that like, subscribe, turn on your bell notification so you'll never miss another episode if you're watching this on YouTube. And then if you're watching this on Spotify, podcasts, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else that you could listen to podcasts, please leave that 5-star rating. I am almost at 100 ratings, you guys. So I appreciate every single 75 of you who have already done so. Actually, more than 75 on Spotify, but more on the other apps. I think most people listen on Spotify. I appreciate a Spotify listener. I don't know how anyone can talk shit about it. It is superior to Apple Music. I'm sorry. We all have our own preferences, but Spotify is definitely superior. If you are wondering about dating coaching, if you feel like this video was helpful for you, we dive so far into the nitty-gritties when we do one-on-one coaching. I have an 8-week program. I also have a one-on-one session if you have a certain situation that you need to deal with. And then I also have a write-in option if you don't even feel like dealing with me at all. I go really in depth on my messages back. I really put a lot of time and effort into these. So if you have a message that you want to send in, I will respond usually within 24 hours, sometimes a little more if I'm busy, but very prompt with those things. You can hit the link in my bio to find out a little bit more about those packages. And then, yes, let's hop into the episode. I just woke up like an hour ago, so I have a sleepy voice still, so I'm sorry. Welcome to Summer B. What is Summer B? Summer B is, we're all scrambling around trying to, like, the summer fling thing kind of already happened or has, we're also in the midst of like 1,000 retrogrades, which if you're into astrology, basically a lot of things are getting stirred up, especially relationships right now. So if you're going through it with your partner or situationship or whoever you're talking to, just know that it's usually probably the planets and to not make any crazy decisions right now. But if you're going through it, you are like, what the fuck is going on? That's probably why. Blame it on the planetary alignment. I was talking to someone recently and I woke up in a bad mood. I'm like, I just woke up in the crankiest mood. And he's like, yeah, me too. I'm like, let's just blame it on the planetary alignment, and we're sticking with that. So anyway, we are talking about your type today. Your type, again, is probably what's keeping you single, because realistically, okay, so here's my thoughts. My type has changed significantly through the years. Not significantly, but I've had phases of like this specific type of person, they have to fit into this type of box. I wouldn't even entertain anyone outside of that box. Like I have blinders on if that person did not fit into this box. Like I would say probably in middle school, high school, I went through like my skater boy era. I was the scene girl. If you don't know what the scene girl is, basically like the emo, it was like a hip version of like the emo girl. So like the side bang, the super dark makeup, so bad. I have burned every single picture from this era. My family still makes fun of me for it, but I did go through this phase where like the bad boy skater with the hair, like the swishy hair, blonde hair. I was so obsessed with them. Okay. And I think what happened was, I wasn't like the cutest girl ever growing up. And the fact that most of these men or boys, let's say, were not interested in me back, I think my type just naturally changed. And I went through different phases. Like in high school, I went through the phase where they had to be like above 6'6", or I would never, like, I would just go to the tallest people out and about and like talk to them. Literally, I had to be like 7 foot, and it was unrealistic. I get that, but I didn't care what they looked like as long as they were tall. I got over that very quickly. And then I went through this phase where like the super bad boy like probably was in jail a couple of times, but I was super into it because I probably wanted to fix them at the time. Have this bad boy, but then be able to be soft with me, like that like made me feel so much better about myself. But I think that, you know, the more that you grow up, the more that you kind of realize that like these things aren't what I want in my life long term. And naturally those things are going to change. But I do think that a lot of us, even as 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds plus, have laundry lists of things that we want, the specific way we want someone to look like. If they don't fit into that box, we're not even willing to even give them the chance because we're like, ew, absolutely not. When in actuality, that person can be the best thing for you, the best fit for you, the person that's going to make you happiest long term, but we're not willing to look at them because they don't look the way that we want them to look. And we think a lot of times we know what's best for us. We think that we know what we want, but in actuality, we don't know what is going to make us happiest long term until you're in, you know, the situation. Because my 2 last exes is so much my type. I only dated my last ex because he was exactly what I was looking for on paper. Really, I was devaluing my values and then prioritizing my type. And the thing that happens when you deprioritize your values, which really should mean the most when you are looking for a partner, not necessarily what your type is, because your type's going to change, and what you are originally attracted to someone for is going to be the reason why you hate them over time. So your type is going to change from that. Like, have you ever noticed that you have a type and then you meet some people of your type and you're like, ew, this is not it anymore. And then your type of that person changes because you're like, I can never date someone like this again. My ex, I've mentioned this before, my type at the time, I went through this athlete phase, and I'm sure a lot of people have, but I went through this huge athlete phase in college, and they had to be an athlete. Like, it was just, if they weren't, like, I didn't even want to be seen with them. I, you know, dated all the athletes. I could not date them anymore because they started to know each other and it was just getting really bad. And I'm like, I have to change my type a little bit. So when I started going into the workforce and like post-college, my type changed to was formerly an athlete, didn't make it to get to the next phase, but still has a really good job, still has an athletic body, and still takes the gym very seriously. That was my type. When I got into that relationship, what bothered me the most, I think, was he took sports way more seriously than I did. Would prioritize that, like staying at home and watching the game. Whereas like I'm cool with watching football, but like let's watch it out and about with other people, and I can get into it a lot more than like sitting on the couch with just me and him watching a game that I'm not that interested in, realistically. If it was soccer or like sometimes even basketball, I could do. Football, watching it by myself on the couch, really not my thing. And I realized that really quickly because every Sunday when I wanted to brunch and like go out and about on the streets, he wanted to stay at home and watch the games. And that was definitely like an eye-opening experience. Like, I don't know that I could date an athlete now. Or someone that just took sports way too seriously, unless I was equally as interested in that. Before I even say that, I think that it's okay to have different interests than your partner, as long as you're okay with what that entails. I think when I was in this relationship, I was super clingy and very smothering. I have my own life now. I'm very like secure in my own. I love being independent. I genuinely would not want to lose myself in a relationship again. So knowing that the next person that I do pick, I would have to trust them enough, have a good enough relationship to like go and do my own things and like be with my friends and like not forget about my own life. So I do think that it's okay to have different interests. I know so many couples that are like wildly different, but they just work perfectly because they do their own things, but then they come together at the end of the day and they have like, they learn from each other in those aspects. They're interested in each other's interests. And I think what it really comes down to is that you're respectful of that person's interests and hobbies, and you're interested in their lives. Like if you can't get on board, if you can't be interested or excited for them, maybe you don't get it. But like, I feel like if you're really in love with someone, you want to know about their lives and you want to know what they're interested in, and hearing them talk about their passions should be exciting for you. And if it's not, you know, that's maybe something that you should look into, because in order for a relationship to be happy and successful long term, I feel like there's actually this study, and I don't know what the study's called. I'm just throwing this out as an example, but the way that you can tell if a relationship really is going to last, there's like an 80% success rate on this test, is if one of the people say like, oh, like look at that bird outside, like how cool is that? And then if the other partner isn't excited and they just kind of like brush it off like, okay, like whatever, that relationship is so much more likely to fail long term than the person who's equally as excited, like, oh, that's so cool, I'm interested because you're interested. Even if that's a thing, so much more likely to have a successful relationship. And I probably butchered this whole like story here, but I'm telling you, look it up. I don't know what it's called, but it is an actual study. It's okay to have different interests, but I think that what you really should be looking for is someone to value and respect your interests and hobbies. They don't necessarily have to be into every single thing that's the same and like all the same things and do all the same things, because honestly, you can't really learn anything from the person that's so similar to you. It's kind of like a dick measuring contest. Whereas if someone has different tastes and different things than you, then you get to learn different aspects of like whatever they're interested in. You get to expand your mind a little bit instead of just being so set in where you're at and like they have to fit into my mold and like all the things that I like. I just don't think that works as much as like maybe having a little bit of a difference in interest, I guess. But I also think that types, like either whether it be physical types, whether it be religious types or monetary types, if you're dating someone or your type is like, oh, they have to be a millionaire. Why do they have to be a millionaire though? Because like you can live pretty comfortably and still have like a nice luxurious life if they're not a millionaire. What are you actually searching for? I also think that if your sole focus is to find someone who's rich and has a lot of money and funds, and if that is your type, like rich guy is your type, then you have to expect that person may come along 9 times out of 10 is going to come along without the time to give you, without the emotional availability to give you, without that emotional connection to give you. You have to be okay with those things. Like if your type and you are not willing to sacrifice anything else, if your type is money in another person, then you have to be willing to sacrifice in other areas. Because what does your type usually come along with? They usually come along with, okay, they don't have enough time to give you. Be realistic too. You can't have emotional connection. They have to be really good in bed. They have to be rich as fuck. All of these things, like it's maybe out there, but like how many people do you really have to date in order to find that person that's like so compatible and checks every single one of your boxes? I would say give it at least like 80% of what you're looking for. That is someone that you want to settle down with, because probably going to make you happy. But I also think that really focus on why you want the things you want, because I don't think that money is necessarily going to make you, I mean, okay, yes, you can buy all the things you want, but as far as the connection, you may or may not, like you have to be willing to sacrifice a connection, I think, in those cases, in most cases. Not every time, but I do think that you have to be okay with like kind of being on your own a lot, because they're probably working a lot. If you want someone with a really great job, you have to be okay with them pouring more into their job than you. You know, like you can't have it all. Know where you're willing to sacrifice though. If you need the emotional connection, and I think this was like really for me what I've learned about myself is like I really need that emotional connection with someone. So if they were pouring a lot of time into other things, or they didn't care as much about like our connection, don't think that it would work long term. Like no, actually it would not work long term. Those are values for me that need to be fulfilled, and I think your values are different than your type. So your values are non-negotiable. Like this person has to value the same things in order for you guys to go in the same direction. Like if you're super family oriented and this person does not want a family at all, that is a value that is going to clash, and you guys are not compatible at the end of the day, because you have very different views of what you want your future to look like. Here's kind of what happened to me recently, and this is kind of why I'm making this video. I think I talked about this in a previous episode, but I want to get into it like in more detail here. Went to San Diego, was by myself in San Diego, and was walking around, and these people invited me to come sit down. I've already talked about this. If you've already heard about the story, I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. But I sat down with these guys. I'm not attracted to any of them. Like, I'm actually not attracted. They're not my type at all. But they were cool. They were from London. And I'm like, okay, well, like, that's kind of a vibe. I was open to the idea of just, like, sitting down and talking to them. They invited me over. I sat down and talked to them for, like, 3 hours. And we had a really great time. And then at the end, I was kind of vibing with one of the guys. And I'm like, you know what? Why have I been so closed off to the idea of, like, someone looking in a different way? I could open my pool up so much if I were to just give different people chances. I had such an aha moment here. It didn't work out, obviously. It forced me to step outside of my comfort zone. If I was not alone, I would never even sit down with them. I would be like, no, not my type, not doing it. But the fact that I was alone and I didn't have anything else to do, I was kind of forced to be put in that, not forced, because I could have just went home. But I was open to the idea of sitting down with them and just talking. There was zero expectations. Moral of the story, because now that has changed my type completely, and I'm now like opening my eyes up to other people that might be someone that I would be willing to date. People that I have been texting have been not my normal type, but I'm so much more connected, and I feel like I can be so much more myself. I don't care as much because like it's gonna pan out or it's not gonna pan out, and I'm gonna be fine either way. And I think that's the beauty of not dating your type, is that there's not as much pressure for it to happen, because you're like, well, then they weren't my type and we didn't work out, and that's fine. Whereas I think when you are dating your type, there's much more pressure on that, because you're like, this has to work out. This is everything that I want. And then you get anxious. Then you feel like you have to make it work, and then you're forcing it. And it's too much. The benefits of not dating your type is that you're letting it just beautifully unfold. And I think that's why not dating your type works. Okay, so the guy that I am kind of dabbling in, whatever, I don't know what's going on, but he doesn't even live here. He lives in London, but I'm moving to London. I decided, hopefully, if I like it, I think I'm gonna just go, but that's to be determined. He is not my type at all. And I think the fact that there's just no pressure on it makes it that much better, because everything is just unfolding kind of naturally. And if it doesn't work out, it's fine. But if it does work out, I would have so overlooked this guy because I wasn't like, he wasn't my physical type. I'm still attracted to him, but he physically wasn't like in the box of what I wanted. The more that we think we know what we want, I think that's putting us deeper into this hole. And I think the more noise from the outside perspective of like, oh no, you would look good with this type of person. Like, all my friends still think, they're like, no, you need an athlete. I'm like, you guys, no. Like, absolutely fucking not. I would never date an athlete anymore. Fuck no. Just because I know what they're all about. There's like a 1% of athletes that are actually good people, and that's not what I'm looking for anymore. Like, I'm ready to like settle down, start a family, that kind of thing. Whereas I'm not gonna get that. Like, I know the type of lifestyle that you have to be okay with when dating an athlete, and it's usually, you know, you have to be okay with them basically being gone all the time, being at practice, being in games, like all the time, plus all of the other girls chasing them, plus you have to worry about, most of them are unfaithful, and I have a lot of entail on that. But yeah, no, like, it's not like, I don't want to be anxious while I'm with someone. Like, I want to know that that person is so loyal that I trust them. I have nothing to worry about. That's my type now. My type now is someone who's going to be interested in me, someone who does the small things, someone who's interested. I think a lot of times people's type is when they are not interested. Oh, like, you're not interested in me? Now I want to work 10 times harder for you to be interested in me. Instead of just taking that as a sign that, hey, they're not interested in you, move along. It's not going to be a fit. Okay. Yes, I think a lot of times our ego gets in the way of, we think that we should have this type of person, this archetype of person, whereas that might not fit into your life. Like, you have to be self-aware enough to know, what do I actually need from a person? Write down all of your values and date outside of your type. I am challenging you here's what I always tell people when we're talking about like dating apps and stuff, because I think that when we are on dating apps, it's limiting us because we're only checking, if they check all the boxes of like this one's super attractive, I'm only swiping right on the super attractive ones. I think that if you find them attractive enough to even be like oh, okay, they could maybe grow on me, go for that person, because you may find that they have a lot more in common and a lot more things that they bring to the table than that person who is that 10 out of 10 that you think you're gonna be so happy with and settle down with. The person that's maybe like that, like 7, 8, like a medium ugly person. Yes, everyone's like, don't date the medium ugly person, because once you get your heart broken, then you're like, why did I settle? But honestly, I don't think that looks wise you're going to be settling as long as they share the same values. You're not settling when you are with someone who shares the same values with you. It doesn't matter what they look like. I think a lot of times we're like, okay, I have to be with a certain person because of how they're going to look by me. I don't want them to embarrass me in front of like my friends and my family, whatever. But in actuality, that's long term. You are with this person all the time. I picture this. Close your eyes. You're going to be with this person on your deathbed, and everyone else around you basically is irrelevant. And you're left with this person of who they are as a person. Are you really going to feel connected to this person, or are you going to be like, damn, I should have just dated someone who, because your looks are out the window at this point, right? Date someone who's going to fill you up and like make you feel like a better person, make you want to be a better person. I think a lot of times we mistake the purpose of having a relationship. Yes, you want to like get married, have kids, all the things. And I think that should be important and beautiful in its own sense. I truly think that being in a relationship is to help your soul evolve and grow. So if you're picking someone who they look great, they may help you grow, but they're going to drag you through hell in order for you to grow. Whereas if you just do the work prior to getting into a relationship, and I think that also when you're not healed, your type is going to be significantly different than when you are healed. But when you're healed, you start to think about what's important a lot differently in people. You start to value what their values are instead of, oh, they looked really good and we look good together. Let's make this work. Let's try to force the pieces together in order to make this work. They're going to help you grow as a soul, but in the way that is painful. Whereas going for someone based on your core beliefs and values, they're going to help you grow and elevate to the next level by lifting you up instead of tearing you down in order to lift you up. There is a huge difference, but it's up to you of which one you'd prefer. But that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you all next Tuesday. Also, I'm going to leave a poll. If you're on Spotify, I'm going to leave a poll about what the next episode should be. Please participate. Now's your time to be interactive. What do you guys want to hear? Let me know. I'm going to leave a few options, and you pick what would be the best.